Good morning, everyone. That was a beautiful prayer we just recited. I was totally unfamiliar with it. It's really, really beautiful. And I want to thank the music team. They do such a fabulous job, don't they always? And they have really captured the music they chose today. I chose one song, and Kathy Sembert agreed to sing it, which she's going to do a little bit later. But they chose everything else, and it's so consistent with the message of love. It's beautiful. I particularly love the one where it's start every day with peace. I start every day with love. I start every day with joy. And in keeping with my theme, those are love's children. Those are not fear's brood. And where that title came from was from a book I have been enamored with for the last several months. It's called Adventures of I, capital I. And it's by Tanya Katsos. She's of Greek heritage. And this book is fairly extensive. It's a very small book. It's about less than 300 pages. But it is so extensive and answered so many questions for me about so many different things. And there's so much material in here that I think I could do a month-long workshop meeting 4 or 5 times a week in it because there's so much material. But I really thought that for today, that this essence, when I read these words, that we basically have 2 ways to live life. We have the way of living in love with life or in fear of life. And that's a choice that somehow along the way we must make. And it manages every aspect of our life. And I love the idea of love having children and fear has a brood. I'm one of 10 children, and I grew up in a relatively small town in the Allegheny Mountains. And my maiden name's Morgan, and my dad's name was Don, and everybody called him Donnie Morgan. Well, and they all referred to us as Donnie Morgan's brood, because I think they thought we were a bunch of little hooligans. We probably were, but we had so much fun we didn't care. But that word brood it casts a feeling of brooding, of a darkness. And that's what fear does to us. And fear's brood are things like worry, discontent, anger, hatred, just plain ugly, rude. Those are all things that we act out in fear, or act out of fear when we are experiencing fear. And those are what we populate our life with. Not intentionally. That's not how we want to be. We don't get up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to see how much anger I can drum up, or how much angst, or how much drama. Well, maybe the drama for fun, but we don't seek it out particularly. But do we get up in the morning and say, I'm going to procreate love's children? Are we going to get up in the morning and say, I'm going to experience joy? This song was perfect today because it says that's exactly what we do. I get up every day. I start my day with joy. I start my day with love. I start my day with peace. Those are the things that can totally shape our human experience as spiritual beings having the human experience. So how do we get there? Well, let's back up a little bit and understand a few things. Many of us have heard some of this before, or maybe even all of it, but hopefully I'm going to share some of the ways that Tanya in her book shared that will help bring more clarity and help get us more within our grasp to live life from a space of love and to live life in love. But you know where you have to start? Self-love. One of the most challenging at times for us to feel. And let's back up a bit, another step, and say, well, what is this experience we're having here? Well, the truth of the matter is our experience here that we have as the human experience is really an illusion. As Einstein said, all of reality is an illusion, although a very persistent one. We take it in and believe in its reality. But let me read you something that may change whether you think everything you perceive with your five senses, and your five human senses, and they are human, are the means through which we have the human experience. But that doesn't constitute the complete truth of reality. And I thought this was so clever, she shared in this book, and you may have heard it before. It's the idea that if we, whatever I did with it, how to judge reality by its appearance. Your physical senses are compelling enough to convince you that you are sitting still, right here in this room, not absolutely still and quiet. When reality, we are spinning around the sun at 66,660 miles per hour. Do we have any perception of that? No, we don't. Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a great series if you're not familiar with it, had this to say on the subject. The fact that we live at the bottom of a deep gravity well on the surface of a gas-covered planet going around a nuclear fireball 90 million miles away and think this to be normal and real is obviously some indication of how skewed our perception of reality is. Pretty amazing, isn't it, when you think about it? And yet it is so true. Everything he said is true. But what is our reality? Our reality is we're tooling along on this lovely little earth. We're enjoying it when it's sunny, and if you like snow, you're enjoying it when it's cold. We don't think of the sun as a nuclear fireball, and we don't think of that we're in this gravity well. That's not part of our conscious thinking on a daily basis. So how do we get from illusion, perception, reality? How do we get there? Well, let's start with the understanding that how we create our reality comes from the fact that there's 3 levels of consciousness. We have subconsciousness. We all are familiar with that term. And what that is that is what we don't have a conscious awareness of, but it's where everything we've been programmed with or learned, and a lot of that is self-programming. Others is influenced by other outside things. That's the programs that are running our life. And until we become aware that that's what's running our life, we're not going to be able to make it go where we want to go. We're not going to be able to write the programs in there that are going to take us on a path of love. And it is from that programming that fear is born. And fear is so debilitating when we allow it to permeate so many aspects of our life in so many different ways. But so you have this. So how do we become aware? Well, the next level up is our self-conscious mind, meaning we are conscious of self. We are conscious that all the stuff going on in our subconscious is sending out vibrations to communicate with the God mind, with the universe, with the absolute all, whatever term you are comfortable with. That is, and in unity, we're pretty comfortable with God, aren't we? Yeah, I think so. I can say God today. I'm not in a secular setting. And so the God mind. And the universe and God, we have total free will. And whatever vibration we send out there, there's no judgment. There's no judgment. It reacts to that. It delivers that. Good, bad, or ugly. That's why we have some pretty unsavory experiences, because of where our vibration's gone, or the collective conscious vibration, which we can become sucked into, unless we are consciously diligent of where our thoughts and emotions are. And then the third level, so you had the subconscious, you had the self-conscious, and at the self-conscious level, that's our active mind. That's where we make the decisions of what message to send to the subconscious mind to rewrite those programs. And the superconscious mind is when we connect and become one with our higher self, with the God mind. And think about this. When we connect with the God mind, with the absolute, when our superconscious connects with that, we become one with that. And that means all of God, all of the absolute, is present in our superconscious all the time. Now, whether we're tapped into it or not, that's a different story. But it is absolute. And the absolute is unchangeable and immutable. And that's phenomenal power. It is that power that we can connect to, that we have the God-given right to connect to. And it is from there where we can find self-love. Because the I in us, remember the name of her book is The Adventures of I. It's when we can get to the point of experiencing I in all of its magnificent, immutable, unchangeable glory. It's the perfection of each and every one of us. And self-love isn't about acknowledging your imperfections, of your personality and your ego. And it's not about saying, well, okay, I'll work with that, I'll deal with that, I'll improve all that. Self-love is understanding, connecting to your I self, and knowing that as you are perfection. And nothing needs added, and nothing can be subtracted. And you are loved unconditionally at that absolute level. And if you can see your connection to that higher self, that spiritual higher self of I, you can begin to love yourself enough. And it's not an overnight miracle. Well, it could be. If you have strong enough faith fueled by love, it can be an overnight miracle. And that's the fascinating thing about the universe and God. You know what? Everything's possible with God. Everything is possible. anything you desire is out there as a possibility in the absolute. And that means all possibilities. It doesn't say, God didn't say, oh, sorry, Chris, not for you today. I ain't doing it. He didn't say that. It doesn't happen. The possibilities are out there. The probability becomes the challenge. The probability of whether what you desire becomes the challenge. And guess who's in charge of that probability? Right here. Each and every one of us. And that is why self-love becomes so important. We have to love ourselves enough to grant ourselves the right to all that is gorgeous and beautiful and happy. And it is in there that we find enormous joy. And you know what happens to the aspects, the imperfections of the personality? When you start to love yourself purely and unconditionally, guess what happens to those? They start to fade away. They become non-existent because you're not feeding them anymore. You are living life in love. And you are procreating joy. You are procreating happiness. You are procreating peace and prosperity and beauty. You no longer are creating any more of those hooligan little broods. We don't need those. Although I'm glad we had the Morgans, we needed those. But we don't need hooligans in our lives, especially self-made ones. Though that is where we have the option. And Tanya gives 2 great exercises, if you would. 3, actually, to help us get there. The first part is connecting with the I. And she teaches this beautiful meditation that's very, very simple. And you do it at night as you're falling asleep. You address yourself by name, gently, like you would a loving child you're trying to wake up. You address yourself like I would say, Marianne, Marianne, Marianne. You keep saying that over and over gently until you fall asleep, because that's the name that I is in the world. That's, you, but I is in you. And every time I say that, I have a degree in English, and that just grates me because it's incorrect grammatically, but it's so accurate, there's no other way to say it. And your first prelude song of the I Am, she teaches that, we use a lot of affirmations. I am love, I am, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, there's a better thing to do, because what happens with most of us, and I know it's happened to me, maybe not you, if I get into these affirmations and I say, okay, I am calm, I am happy, oh yeah, I'm really good today. And guess what? I have this voice in the back of my head saying, really? Who are you trying to fool? And so we bring up this resistance when we are using I am affirmation. She has better ones, which I'll share with you in a minute. So her suggestion is to use, there's a pun there, the power of auto-suggestion, where we talk to ourselves just like we called our name as we're falling asleep, to start to touch base with and connect with the I. now we talk to ourselves like a loving child and say, Marianne, you are successful. Or, Marianne, you really are a caring person. You talk to yourself about whatever it is that you want to be and want to feel. And it's it goes down much easier, especially if you picture yourself talking to the God-child in you. If you are talking to a child, your child, that's a whole lot softer and easier to swallow than, well, I'm a really good person. That when we try to force ourselves to accept the affirmations, the first person affirmations. And it is an extremely powerful thing. And she suggests very strongly, you write out some conversations you want to have with yourself. And they don't have to be long. They can be 2 or 3 sentences on a subject. If you are struggling with a relationship with, say, a friend or a child, write it out. You are a loving friend too. You are you care about that person. But use names and address yourself by name. Because your identity in your head is your name. And address yourself by name. And it is much easier than the I am affirmations. The I am affirmations she strongly recommends are simple. I am I. I am the I or the higher self. I am I. I am, I can, and I will. Those are the affirmations that she strongly suggests that you use after you use the auto-suggestion. And the auto-suggestion is pretty powerful stuff. It is amazing how fast you can calm yourself down when you're talking to yourself as a child. Your whole demeanor softens. Try it this week. Your whole demeanor softens. And resistance eases away. I have to share a real short little story from when my son who's now 41, I can't believe that. How did that happen? Nobody asked me, could he get this old, At any rate, he's 41. And my son Jason and I've been very close all of his life. And his father and I divorced when he was like 4, but we raised him together, so there was never a real issue there. And I remember 2 things very strongly, and they came pretty close together. To understand the difference between love and dealing with what's out there in the world. I picked him up from daycare after school something because it was a day he was coming to my house. And when he got in the car, I could tell he was a little off. And I asked him what was wrong. And he went on to tell me about these things that he was upset with his dad about. Well, trying to be the neutral, supportive parent, and I said, well, Jason, your dad does love you. And he goes, Mom, just like, anytime he goes, Mom, in that tone of voice, I knew I was probably going to learn something, or at least get a lesson handed right back to me. And he goes, Mom, I understand the difference between liking what people do and loving them. I do not need you to tell me. 6 years old. 6 years old. There was absolutely no doubt in his mind. And we are born with that inherent awareness of love. We teach it out of ourselves. We teach it out of ourselves to make it conditional. He obviously got unconditional love at 6 years old. I almost drove off the street that day. And one other time when he was a little bit older, I was going through a tough situation, and it just overwhelmed me one day, and this was before I found unity, by the way. It overwhelmed me one day, and I was in the kitchen doing something, and I felt so overwhelmed, I just sank to the floor and was sobbing. And my son came down the stairs, and he sees me on the floor, and he sits down next to me, and he puts his arm around me. He laid down, actually, next to me, and he put his arm around me, and he goes, "Mom, love will make it better. Love will make it better." And then he starts joking with me and saying funny little things. And finally, I could get up off the floor. And he goes, "See, I love you. That was enough." The understanding of love when we're younger is so powerful. Now, can we get that? Can we get there now? Can we get there now? Yes, we can. We can through these practices that she suggests. And we can stop procreating fear's brood. And we can procreate with absolute abandon all of love's children. And let that populate our life. Let that populate the world. Imagine populating the world with love's children. We can do that. And when we connect, when we stop looking outside of ourselves for the answer and understand that the absolute circle of love begins and ends with self-love, when we understand that, we will find what we have been looking for is that the kingdom of heaven is, as all the masters that have walked the earth have told us, it is within. Thank you very much today.